Disclaimer: this story explores mature emotional themes intended for an adult audience. It does not contain explicit material. Viewer discretion is advised. I was folding a damp pile of towels, the hum of the dryer filling the silence like white noise, when my stepson said something that made my hands freeze mid-fold. You know those moments that don't feel real when they happen? Where the air shifts and your body goes still because your brain hasn't caught up yet. That was me standing in our laundry room with a hand towel half folded and a lump forming in my throat. Let me back up. My name's Aaron. I'm 37, and 3 years ago, I married a man named David. He's calm, kind, solid, the kind of man who carries groceries for strangers and always remembers to ask how your day was. He has a son from a previous marriage, Ryan. He was 18 when David and I got married. I walked into that relationship knowing I wasn't there to play mom. Ryan didn't need another parent, he already had two. I wasn't trying to win him over or earn gold stars. I just wanted to be someone steady. Someone real. But it's tricky blending families. No one really tells you how to navigate the space between not mom and not a stranger. It's all gray. Some days Ryan would talk to me like I'd been in his life forever. Other days I'd get silence. Or worse, polite distance, like I was a teacher or a neighbor or someone passing through. I didn't take it personally. At least, I tried not to. So when Ryan asked to come over last Saturday to talk, I was surprised. He's in college now, out on his own mostly. We see him here and there holidays, occasional dinners. I figured maybe he needed help with something, laundry, advice, who knows. I was happy to see him, even if I kept my expectations low. He showed up around noon, still carrying that too cool attitude he uses to hide how sensitive he really is. He hugged David and made small talk for a bit. Then, while David went out to pick up lunch, Ryan followed me to the laundry room. I didn't think anything of it. He leaned against the doorframe while I pulled towels from the dryer and asked casually, "You ever wonder what would have happened if you met Dad earlier?" It seemed innocent enough at first. Just a passing thought. But there was something in his voice, tight, like he was bracing for something. I glanced at him, trying to read his expression. He looked nervous. "Sure," I said carefully. "Sometimes." That's when he said it. Something I never expected to hear. Something that hit me with the force of a gut punch and left me staring at him, towel forgotten in my hands, while a dozen thoughts collided in my head all at once. I won't repeat his exact words, not yet, because to understand the weight of what he said, you'd have to know everything that led up to it. You'd have to understand why it mattered. And believe me, it mattered. It changed everything I thought I knew about my role in this family, about him, about myself. The thing is, sometimes a single sentence can pull the rug out from under years of pretending everything's fine. Sometimes it's the quiet moments, the in-between spaces, where the truth finally finds its voice. And in that moment, standing in a room that smelled like detergent and warm cotton, I realized the story I thought I was living wasn't the whole story. Not even close. So when Ryan finally told me what had been weighing on him, it wasn't just surprising. It was staggering. And it changed everything. To understand what came next, you'll need the whole story. And it starts right here with that towel, that silence, and that sentence I'll never forget. Because what he said, it wasn't just words. It was a secret. One that had been buried for years. And now it was out. I stared at Ryan, heart pounding in my chest, towel still clenched in my hands like a life raft. His words echoed in my head, even though they'd only just left his mouth. "I used to wish you were my mom." Not in a sweet, sentimental way. Not like a Hallmark card or some sitcom moment. He said it with rawness. Like it cost him something. Like it wasn't a compliment, more like a confession he'd carried too long. I didn't know what to say. Ryan had always kept a part of himself closed off around me. I saw flickers of warmth now and then when we'd laugh over a stupid commercial or when he'd ask if I needed help around the house. But mostly, there was this space between us. A kind of quiet tension that never fully left the room when we were alone. So to hear that, to know he'd ever thought that, even once, felt like stumbling into a truth I wasn't supposed to hear. "Ryan," I said slowly, still trying to find my footing. "That's a lot." He didn't flinch. He just looked down at the floor and shrugged, his voice low. "I know. I don't even know why I said it. I didn't plan to. It just came out." I could tell he was scared. Not of me, but of what it meant now that he'd said it out loud. We didn't talk about his mom much. Julia. She and David divorced when Ryan was 14. From what I knew, it hadn't been bitter or explosive, just cold. Empty. Like two people slowly backing out of each other's lives until they couldn't remember what they'd ever seen in one another. But Ryan, he'd taken it hard. Even after Julia moved to another city, she stayed involved: calls, visits, gifts. Still, something between them had fractured. I never asked the details. It wasn't my place. I just tried to be present. Helpful. Normal. "I don't hate her," Ryan said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I don't want to be that guy who trashes his mom. She did what she could. But sometimes it felt like she was more about keeping up appearances than actually being there." I didn't say anything. I could feel his shame hanging in the air, heavy and quiet. "You were different," he continued. "Even when I barely talked to you. You saw me. I mean, really saw me." That one hit me hard, because I had seen him. Every version of him. The sarcastic, shut-down teenager. The anxious college freshman pretending to have it all together. The young man now, standing in front of me, brave enough to admit something he didn't owe me. But I was still afraid to hope. Because wanting something doesn't mean you're entitled to it. And loving someone doesn't mean they're ready to love you back. "What does this mean?" I asked gently. "Why now?" He hesitated. Then he looked up, his eyes glassy but focused. "Because I think I've been holding on to this idea that I couldn't let anyone else matter without betraying her. And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to move forward. With you in my life. For real." There it was. The thing we'd both been dancing around for years. But even as he said it, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Because moving forward isn't always clean. And letting someone in, really in, means digging through everything you buried just to survive. There was more he wasn't saying. I could feel it in my bones. A deeper truth, maybe. Or a memory he hadn't let surface yet. Whatever it was coming. And when it did, I knew it wouldn't just reshape our relationship. It would force us both to reckon with a version of the past we'd been avoiding. What he'd told me was the start. But the real story? That was still hiding in the shadows. The next few days felt like walking across thin ice, not sure which step would crack it wide open. Ryan's words stayed with me. "I used to wish you were my mom." I kept replaying the moment in my head, not because I doubted what he said, but because I knew it meant more than he let on. He'd peeled back a layer, but the truth? It was still deeper. And something about the timing bothered me. He didn't just come over for closure. He came for something else. David noticed the shift too. That night, after Ryan left, he looked at me across the dinner table and asked, "Everything okay with him?" I hesitated. He opened up a little. David raised an eyebrow. "About?" I didn't lie, but I didn't tell him everything either. Stuff with Julia. That was technically true. But I could tell it struck a nerve. David had a way of shutting down when Julia came up. I used to think it was just discomfort. Now I wasn't so sure. Because the next day, David did something odd. He called Julia. I overheard part of the conversation. Tense, clipped. Lots of "that's not the point," and "he needs clarity." I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but it was impossible not to notice the sharpness in his voice. When I asked about it later, he brushed it off with a tight smile. Just parenting logistics. But something had shifted. And I could feel it between all three of us. Like we were circling around a secret none of us wanted to name. 2 days later, I got a message from Julia. We'd never been close. Cordial, sure. Polite. But never personal. So, when I saw her name on my phone, I paused. The message was short. Can we talk? In person. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Whatever this was, it wasn't small. We met at a coffee shop near her place. She looked the same, poised, polished, controlled. But there was a flicker of something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Guilt, maybe? Or fear. I won't waste your time, she said. Ryan's been asking questions. And if he hasn't already told you, he will. So I think you deserve to hear it from me. I sat still, jaw tight. Hear what? She took a breath. When he was younger, things got complicated. After the divorce, I wasn't in a good place. I made some choices I'm not proud of. There were months, almost a year, where I just wasn't present. Not really. I stayed quiet, letting her speak. It was the first time I'd seen her stripped of performance. She looked like she was unraveling at the seams, holding it together by sheer force of habit. He stayed with David most weekends, but there were times I left him alone too long. Times I said I'd be back and wasn't. He never told David. I think he thought it would make things worse. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, pieces clicking into place. And now? I asked. She looked up. Now he wants to rewrite the story. Make it less painful. And that's where you come in. You've been consistent. Safe. He's attached to you. But I need you to be careful. He's still figuring out what this all means. The warning in her voice wasn't cruel. It was tired. Honest. Like she was finally admitting how much she dropped the ball. When I got home, Ryan was waiting. Sitting on the porch like he had something to get off his chest, but didn't know where to start. I need to tell you the rest, he said as I walked up. My heart tightened. Because I knew once he did, everything would change. Whatever he'd carried for years, whatever darkness he'd swallowed, it was coming to the surface. And whatever it wasn't just between him and his mother anymore. It was ours now. Ryan didn't sit down right away. He stood at the edge of the porch, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on some invisible point in the distance. I watched him for a moment, heart hammering, because whatever he was about to say, it wasn't going to be simple. I didn't just come over the other day to talk, he finally said. I came because I remembered something. That sentence alone chilled me. He turned to face me, jaw tight. There's this one night I kept pushing out of my head for years. I didn't want to deal with it. I told myself I was making it a bigger deal than it was. But it's been clawing its way back. I nodded slowly, unsure if I should speak yet. I was about 13, he said. It was after the divorce. Mom was out late again. I was home alone. I remember being hungry. I'd been calling her, texting her. Nothing. He swallowed hard. She came back around 1 a.m. I was on the couch, still awake. She was off. Not drunk. Just wired. Distracted. She barely looked at me. I remember asking where she'd been. She snapped at me. Said it wasn't my business. Then she just walked past me and went to her room. He paused, breathing shallow. That part, I remembered. But I always brushed it off. Parents have bad nights. Whatever. But the thing is, something else happened that night. My throat went dry. I had this instinct to follow her. I don't know why. Just a feeling. I walked down the hall, and her door was open just a crack. She was on the phone. Arguing. Not yelling, just tense. I heard her say something like, he can never find out. He'd lose his mind. Ryan's voice cracked. I thought she was talking about Dad. That she was hiding something from him. But now, I don't know. What do you think she meant? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head. That's what's eating at me. I think she was hiding something bigger than just her being out late. And I think it had something to do with me. He finally sat down, slumping onto the porch step like the weight of the past had finally crushed him. I asked her about it once, maybe a year later. She brushed it off. Said I misheard, but there's this hole in my memory around that time. Like a stretch of months I can't fully recall. Everything's fuzzy. And I think I've been too scared to press. Too scared to remember. I sat beside him, stunned. It wasn't just regret or family tension anymore. This was something darker. Deeper. She used to say weird things back then, he went on. Stuff like, you were always too sensitive, or, you don't remember things right. I thought she was just being defensive. But now I wonder if she was trying to rewrite things so I wouldn't dig. We sat in silence for a long minute. What do you want to do? I asked quietly. He looked at me, eyes full of pain and resolve. I need to talk to her again. Not as her son, just as someone who deserves answers. And I want you there. Me? He nodded. You're the only person I trust to tell me if what I'm remembering is real or just a scared kid's imagination. I wanted to say yes. I also wanted to say no. Because whatever Julia had buried, whatever Ryan was about to uncover, I had a sinking feeling it wasn't going to stay in the past. And when it came out, it was going to change everything. Not just for Ryan, but for all of us. We met Julia at her condo the next evening. She looked calm on the surface, like someone who'd had a full day to rehearse. But I saw the twitch in her jaw, the stiffness and how she held her arms. She was bracing for something. Ryan didn't waste time. I need the truth, he said the moment we stepped inside. No spin. No guilt. Just the truth. She nodded, motioned for us to sit. All right. Ask me. He took a deep breath. That night, when I was 13. You came home late. You were on the phone. I heard you say, he can never find out. Who were you talking about? And what was it about? Julia stared at him for a long second, then looked at me. She hesitated. Are you sure you want her here for this? She stays, Ryan said. His voice didn't waver. Julia stood and walked to the kitchen counter. She didn't sit back down. I wasn't talking about your dad, she finally said. And I wasn't talking about some affair. She turned to face us. Her eyes were sharp now. Clear. I was talking about you. Ryan froze. You don't remember everything, Ryan. But I do. Her voice didn't shake, and that was somehow worse than if it had. Back then, you had these episodes, moments where you'd shut down, go silent for hours. Sometimes you'd scream at nothing. I thought you were just acting out after the divorce. But then, there was that day at school, when you lashed out at a teacher and didn't remember doing it afterward. What? Ryan looked stunned. We got you tested, she continued. Privately. I didn't want it on any records. I didn't want your father involved. He was already blaming me for everything falling apart. You kept this from him? I asked. I kept it from everyone, she said. Because the results, they weren't clear. They said it could be trauma or dissociation or something else entirely. But they also said there were signs you might have witnessed something violent. Ryan's face went pale. I asked you over and over what you remembered. You'd just shake your head or change the subject. But then one night, you told me a story. What kind of story? You said there was a man. That he came into the house when you were home alone. You described him in detail. Said he talked to you. Asked you questions. Said not to tell anyone or someone would get hurt. Ryan blinked hard. That's not real. That can't be real. You swore it was a dream the next day, Julia said. You begged me to forget it. I convinced myself you imagined it. But the thing is, I think I believed you. I think I still do. The room went quiet. Then Ryan spoke, his voice barely audible. You thought someone broke into the house and threatened me, and you didn't tell anyone. I was scared, Julia said. And I didn't trust myself. Or my memory. or anyone else. I was unraveling and trying to keep it all together, and you were slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know how to stop it. Ryan stood up, stunned. So what now? You're saying I imagined a man who may or may not have been real, and I've been carrying that since I was a kid. Julia didn't answer. She didn't have to, because in that moment, I saw it in Ryan's face. Something had clicked. A new fear. A deeper one. What if it wasn't a stranger, he whispered. What if it was someone we knew? Everything shifted. Again. And the truth? We hadn't even hit bottom yet. Ryan paced the room like a man trying to outrun something he couldn't name. Julia stood frozen. The kind of man who showed up at every birthday, every barbecue, always with a joke, always too familiar. I'd never liked how he looked at people, how he didn't seem to blink enough. He came by that week, Julia continued. I didn't think anything of it. I was late getting home that night. I told him Ryan might be there alone for a bit. He said he'd swing by and check in. Make sure Ryan had eaten. Ryan went still. His face turned ghost white. I remember him, he said. Not that night. But I remember him being weird. Always acting like we had inside jokes. I never knew where I knew him from. He said he only stopped by for 10 minutes, Julia added quietly. But I found one of his business cards on the hallway floor, inside the house. And you didn't say anything? Ryan's voice cracked. You knew he might have been the one and you said nothing? I was scared, she said again, weaker this time. Scared I'd be blamed. That David would never forgive me. Ryan stepped back like he'd been slapped. So instead you let me grow up thinking I was crazy? Julia's face crumbled. I'm sorry, Ryan. I thought I was protecting you. But I know now I was protecting myself. Silence fell. The kind that comes after a storm, but before the damage is clear. We all stood there, the truth between us like shattered glass. Then Ryan said something I didn't expect. I want to talk to him. Absolutely not, Julia snapped. Ryan, no. I have to. He turned to me. Will you come with me? I wanted to say no. I wanted to keep him safe, to pull him out of this mess, and tell him none of it mattered now. But it did. It did. Yeah, I said. I'll go. That night, Ryan called David. Told him everything. I watched David's face twist in ways I hadn't seen before. Shock, confusion, then something close to rage. And here's the twist no one saw coming. David didn't deny it. He didn't even question it. He just said, I always had a bad feeling about Dawn. But I thought I was being paranoid. Ryan stared at him. You knew something was off, and you didn't say anything either? David lowered his head. I didn't want it to be true. The next day, we went to see Dawn. It was civil. Calm. Too calm. Ryan confronted him, and for a moment, Dawn looked blank, then amused. I was just doing what your mom asked, he said with a smirk. Keeping an eye on you. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Ryan didn't say another word. He just turned and walked out. The truth didn't fix anything. It didn't tie things up in a neat bow. But it freed him from doubt, from blame, from the weight of what he couldn't remember. Sometimes closure isn't peace. It's just knowing you were right to hurt. And that has to be enough. The drive home from Dawn's house was quiet. Not heavy like before, but quiet in a different way, like when the worst part of a storm has passed and the cleanup begins. Ryan sat in the passenger seat staring out the window, not saying much. I didn't push. Some truths need space to settle. The next few days were hard, but healing started in small ways. Ryan stayed with us for the weekend. We didn't talk about Dawn or Julia or what he said. We just cooked dinner, watched old movies, and let things breathe. That silence, for once, felt safe. Julia called a few times, but Ryan didn't answer. He wasn't angry, just done. He told me later that forgiving her would come, but not right away. She's my mom, he said. I'll always love her. But love doesn't erase damage. It just gives us the option to repair. David apologized to Ryan too. For not listening to his gut. For not stepping in sooner. And Ryan, in his own way, forgave him. Not with words, but with a long, quiet hug that lasted more than a second or two. That's how you know it's real. As for me, I learned something I didn't expect. I had spent so long tiptoeing around boundaries, not wanting to replace anyone or overstep. But the truth is, Ryan didn't need me to be his mom. He needed me to be there. Present. Steady. Honest. And I was. That mattered more than I ever realized. When Ryan finally sat down to talk to Julia again, it was on his terms. I wasn't there, but he told me later she cried the entire time. She owned everything, no excuses, no defenses. It didn't fix the past, but it helped him stop feeling like the broken one. That's the part no one talks about with family trauma. It's not always about making peace with the people who hurt you. Sometimes it's about finding peace in yourself and realizing their choices don't define your worth. Ryan started therapy again. Not because someone told him to, but because he wanted to. He's ready now to understand his past, not avoid it. And that's strength. Real strength. He told me something else too, something I'll never forget. You saved me more than once and you didn't even know it. Just being someone who showed up, who stayed. That changed things for me. And that was enough. A year later, things aren't perfect, but they're honest. Ryan calls me when he needs advice. He jokes with David more. Julia's rebuilding from the edges slowly. And Don? He's no longer part of any of our lives. Some doors stay shut, and that's how it should be. This whole story started in a laundry room with a pile of towels and one sentence I never saw coming. Now, standing here with hindsight and peace, I realize it was never just about that moment. It was about everything leading up to it. The silences, the shadows, the slow build toward truth. The past doesn't always stay in the past. But when it surfaces, we get a choice, to bury it again or to face it and build something better. Ryan chose to face it. And so did I. And that made all the difference. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Family secrets, emotional confessions, or real-life plot twists? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know. Your feedback helps us bring you more powerful, real, and relatable stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.